Hi everyone, it's William with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series, and I am actually in Dmitri's room today. This room, 309, he identified in a photograph that he sent to his sister of the exterior of the sanatorium with an arrow pointing to his balcony. Whether this was the room that he occupied for the entire 2.5 years of his stay, and whether it's the room where he actually died, that I don't know. But at least we can say that when he first arrived, this was the room that he indicated to his sister. It's on the third floor, and you see this sort of, it's almost like some kind of metaphysical thing behind me there. I was going to do this on the balcony, but I just couldn't get the lighting to work. The sun is so bright. And so that is the open doors to the balcony. So if you want to see the balcony, then I'll be doing one out there, I'm sure, while I'm here. But also I posted a video on the Facebook Grand Duke Dmitri Diaries group. What's wrong with me today? And that I did a video that I did out on this balcony, so you can see that. Okay, so we are up to part 2 of the diary entry for 17th of April, 1921. It was a Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Started out in Vichy. Dmitri and Coco got up, hoping to get on the road pretty quickly, and with about 350 kilometers to go to Paris, and they encountered some very harsh weather, but it thick snow, but it actually sort of was nostalgic for Dmitri. It gave him sort of the illusion for a short time that he was back in Russia. Okay, so our cast today is Coco, of course, and also Maria and Gulia. And as we start this second part of the diary, Dmitri and Coco are still on the road, but we will end it in Paris. Okay, here we go. We had about 100 to 150 kilometers left to go, and passing through Fontainebleau, we arrived in Paris around 5:30. Coco drove me home, and we said goodbye. As farewells go, there was something absurd about it because we simply shook hands and went our separate ways. I called Maria on the telephone. Naturally, we were overjoyed to be back in touch with each other. I had tea, which Pyotr Savodnya made for me, then set off for 49 Rue de Courcelles to see Maria. Well, of course, there were a lot of questions and jokes, and it was just wonderful to be back and to be with her. I dined with Maria, of course, but not at home. We went to the Crucivelonis. It was pretty much a bore. There were some musicians who played for us. Before going back to my place, I stopped by Maria's and spent quite a long time with her. Gulia was apparently in a rather gracious mood. Naturally, a lot was said about Monte Carlo and what I did at the casino. So this is all very interesting stuff, isn't it? I'm reading between the lines. Start out with something really minor, but that interests me. The fact that Coco, apparently once they reached Paris, they switched places. Dmitri had been driving all along, and Coco drove him home instead of waiting until they'd reached his house and then taking over. And that made me think about the trip they made together to Rouen, where she drove the car until they got outside of Paris, and then he took over and started driving. And I'm not sure, what that was all about. If there was some reason why Dmitri didn't want to drive in the city limits, or why Coco didn't want him to drive within Paris. No idea, but I do find it rather curious. Okay, then we come to the absurd farewell. Very much an anticlimax. When Dmitri says absurd, I think, that's what he means. And the question is, what was he expecting? Because all along they had been in this sort of two buddies out on a trip together mode. Um, and Coco had been a little down the last few days, and they hadn't really been connecting very much. But maybe he was expecting at least to be invited in. She was staying or for her to come in. I'm sorry, she was the one who dropped him off, or a kiss, or wasn't it wonderful, darling, or something like that. And that didn't happen. They just shook hands and that was it. But do not fear. This is, we'll be right back spending the whole evening and night with, not overnight, with Coco in the next video, the very next day on the 18th. So anyway, I've entitled this Maria versus Coco, and that's not really what the situation is, because I don't gather that there was a rivalry at all at any point between Maria and Coco. Maria and Coco, Coco was very helpful to Maria in Maria's embroidery business, and helping her to get started in that world of fashion and design in Paris. No, so it's not really between the two women. It's with Dmitri, and it's so clear here that he's so much more emotionally engaged and animated when he talks about his sister, and he's using words like overjoyed and wonderful. And he never mentioned, did he, in the earlier diary entries in Monte Carlo, that he was missing her. Only toward the end did he say, the last few days, did he say he was really anxious to get back to see her and for her birthday. But, it seems like he wasn't really able to connect with Coco at this point in their relationship, whereas with Maria, they were joined at the hip. He had that sense of real intimate connection with her, and being able to talk to her, and he needed that. So that is where we are with that. He clearly did not want to go to somebody else's house to eat that evening. He wanted his sister to himself, and he was glad that that Gulia wasn't upset about that, was being gracious and allowing the siblings to be together. And so, it's interesting what he says about what he and Maria were talking about. Initially, there were jokes and questions, a sister ribbing her brother about going off with this glamorous woman, I suppose. And, well, where did you go, and where did you stay, and what sights did you see, that sort of thing. But later on, in a more serious mood, after they've gotten accustomed to being back with one another, what do they talk about? Not about Coco? Maybe, I don't know, because he doesn't say they talk about Coco. He doesn't say, oh, Maria was very tactful and didn't bring that topic up, or, which is something he said in the past about certain issues when the two of them are together. So I don't know, just in this generic sense, a lot was said about Monte Carlo, and also using a passive verb form instead of saying, we said a lot, or I said a lot about Monte Carlo. Instead, it was a lot was said. So that's a little bit interesting anyway. I don't want to read too much into it. And then the only specific thing, what I did at the casino. So what the heck? Why is that what she's particularly interested in? Well, as you know, and as I've mentioned in the past, although it's not so apparent in this part of the diary. You want the diaries for 1917, 1918, 1920 in particular. You see Dmitri himself discussing his gambling addiction. And it seemed to have, and he got deeply in debt and was taking out loans, and we've talked a little bit about that. And apparently Maria was maybe sounding him out about that a little bit. And I don't think he minded, because my impression is that he came out quite a bit ahead. There was one time, I think, when he told us that he lost quite a lot, but overall, he was really lucky. And on one occasion alone, I think he'd won 5,000 or 6,000 francs. And yeah, overall, it seems like he came out ahead. And so it wasn't such a sore topic, I guess. He could tell her about how well he'd done. Anyway, next time, what do we have in the diary entry for the 18th? Well, shopping for Maria's birthday. Maria's birthday is on the 19th. And apparently, Dmitri does not have adequate presents for her yet. He needs to buy something else. At least, he needs to get something special for her, and he's going to talk about that. And as I said, he'll have lunch with her, he'll do the shopping, but most of the day, the evening and part of the night, he's going to be spending with Coco. So do come back, and I'll see you next time. Bye.